We gotta go back.
SK14.
I'm not a leftist, I'm a liberal, and we should just talk to each other. Okay, but what are we gonna talk about? Because you don't want to talk to people like me. You don't want to talk to anybody who's got anything to say. You want to talk to Jewy Jewstein, who says,
Got a lot of questions about Israel in the last week.
Yeah.
I apologize for my defense of our greatest ally in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I will not apologize.
We know you won't, bitch. Epic.
shut up, you bitch. This guy's the biggest scum-sucking, anti-American loser, traitor.
Who likes Cardi B? 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 Who likes Cardi B?
He's mad. He's mad. Look at that shriveled up little face.
Who likes Cardi B? Who likes
Eat
Cardi
a
B?
gamer moment.
SK14 gang.
In the last week.
Yeah.
I will apologize for my defense of our greatest ally in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I will not apologize.
We know you won't,
for
bitch.
that. But I'm always just very puzzled at times when I get the amount
I'm
of
so
attention
puzzled.
that's
I'm so
on
puzzled all the time.
The Middle East, the only place where all three monotheists,
Somebody's got to go Joker mode.
Who likes Cardi B? 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 Who likes Cardi B?
All right, welcome back to the Death by Tyranny podcast. That was a better transition than I thought it was going to be. Kind of started to stumble over myself there at the last couple of seconds. Sorry about that. So today, and I know I've kind of been all over the place, we talked about Will Smith and kind of what he did, why it wasn't okay, why this pointed more towards how what Jada Smith does isn't okay, and how that led kind of to a good man, or what used to be a good man, Will Smith's downfall. And I think this kind of bleeds into another conversation that we need to have. It's going to be something new that at least I will be doing here on the Death by Tyranny podcast, and that is we've talked about how progressives and leftists, Democrats, if you're on that side of the aisle, that side of the thought process, moral compass, if you will, then, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. So they like to take things that go on and maybe reword it to fit their narrative. They like to redefine definitions, and it's very misleading. It's very propagandy-ish, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's just you can really tell that they're leading a narrative is what I'm trying to get at here. And because of this, I think if we break it down and what they do, how they do it, when they do it, we can officially stop calling leftists and the Democrat Party progressives, because they're not. They're very primitive in the way they think and what they do, and the things that they try to put forward as far as legislation is usually not only 6 months behind the 8 ball, but it's actually 6 months in the opposite direction of being behind the 8 ball. Oh, well, what do I mean by this? What I mean is when you dumb down a person, okay, and you ask them to describe somebody else versus a very highly intelligent person, and you ask them to describe the same person, you're going to get two very different answers. For the highly intelligent, progressive person, you're going to say, describe this man to me. And depending on how this man looks, it might go something like this. He's a very high-functioning person, a very well-dressed person, communicates very well, very successful person, very kind, things like that. He's going to use descriptive words along those lines. Now, if you take the person that is much more primitive or less smart, if you will, and ask him to describe the same person, he's going to go, he's old, he's black, he's this color, doo-doo-doo. So, you see what I'm getting at? When it comes to leftists in the Democrat Party, the thing that is most important is the easiest thing to tell about someone. It's not a high-functioning, intelligent, successful man. It's a black man. And to me, that's not progressive at all. And when you want to talk about pushing the bar forward or being progressive when it comes to equality, the last thing you should be doing is saying black or white in front of whatever topic you're describing this man as. Okay? And so I think we can officially say that they're no longer progressive. They would like you to think that they're progressive, but usually the word progressive is used as a good thing. When you want to say something is coming along very well, innovative, new ideas, you call it progressive. That's not the Democrat Party, not at all. They throw out shitty ideas that usually the Republican Party is doing the opposite of first. So if the Republicans, conservatives say, hey, we support the police, we back the blue, then the Democrats will come out. So they're very, they act after the fact. So they're not proactive. They just kind of wait to see what Republicans and conservatives do, and they do the opposite because they know what sells: hate and fear. And to hate something, to fear something, you really have to see what that something is. You can't just throw it out there. So they don't really have progressive ideas. They don't have new ideas. They just have the opposite of ideas as conservatives or Republicans. And to me, that's not progressive at all. And so if conservatives say they back the blue, and then the Democrats say, hey, we do not. In fact, we're going to defund the police. We're going to protest against the police. We are going to try to harm them and act very, be very, vulgar and violent towards the police. And then that's what they do for 6 months to a year until it leads to obvious devastation and failure. And then they come out and they redefine what's going on there, that happening in that small city or town or for that legislation. They redefine it and they come out and they say, hey, look, we're the progressives. We're going to fund the police. We're going to champion the thin blue line. That's not progressive. That's not thought leading. That is the total opposite of that. That is waiting to see what everybody else does and reacting. And not only that, but, really being determined to see a failing idea continue on and to the point of almost no return. Now, I'm going to give a few more examples of this, and then we might talk about something else. Depends on how long I go on this tirade. But we all know that the Democratic Party and people on the left like to champion sexual preference, sexual orientation, things of this nature. Well, I'm going to give you an example of the same thing from the opposite side. If a heterosexual man decides that this is the biggest defining thing about himself and goes around and says, hey, I like pussy to everybody he talks to, if he goes around and smacks girls on the asses all the time, you're going to call that person a misogynist. You're going to call him, probably even say that he's sexually assaulting people. But for homosexuals, that's what they expect from them. That's what they champion. That's what they cheer on. They want that when it comes to homosexuals. How is that any different? How is that being equal or spreading equality. That's not. And it goes for the same thing if you say, hey, you can't say that to me. I'm a black man. That's okay to say nowadays. That is what you expect out of the Democratic Party. You would even expect for the white person next to that black person to say, hey, you can't say that to a black person. Now, if you say, hey, you can't say that to me, I'm a white man. Total different response. How is that any different? Well, where's the difference there? And if you say, well, clearly it's in the color. How is that equality? How is that being progressive? It really doesn't make any sense for me to sit here and to continue to do this podcast. And when I'm talking about the Democratic Party or for the left, and then for me to call them progressive when I don't think they're progressive. I really don't. I think they are the total opposite of progressive. I think they are really pushing us back on every aspect of going forward in America. They're bad for our economy. They are bad for foreign affairs. They are bad for racial relations. They are bad for everything. Gun rights, pretty much every right when you think about it, except for what they like. And that is the opposite of the definition of equality. And I think when you come out and you say Democrats are the real racist, I think that's true to some extent. I really do. But to come out and then say they're the real racist, you're not really adding anything to the conversation. You're not really leading by example. It's kind of like whatever you say, I'm rubber, you're glue, bounces off of me and sticks to you type of thing. So I think that's why when you hear some of the more radical right-wing people say, don't say that shit, it sounds stupid, they have a point. They really do. Don't come out and say that the leftists are the real racist. But I think it's something else to say, hey, we've been describing these people as progressive for a very long time, and they're not progressive. We have to stop saying this because we are leading our children to believe that what we believe in is not progressive. We are making our children to believe that our enemy, in a lot of ways, at least politically, is progressive. So as they go through the school system, which we know has totally corrupted and brainwashed our children, not only that, but now we are giving them a weapon to weaponize against the parents, at least the conservative ones, because they're going to teach your children to grow up and to be progressive, to have new ideas, to try to be successful, but also develop anew. And if we keep calling Democrats and leftists progressives, they're going to grow up to believe that that is the good guy. It's not just saying, hey, we're the good guy, they're the bad guy. Now they have a defining word in their brain that they know as a good thing, a good describing thing about an idea or a political party. And you're telling me that it's the opposite, Dad. You're saying that it's the opposite of what you are. Well, so what's right from wrong? Now they're getting mixed messages. Now they're getting this message of, well, my parents say that progressives are wrong. They're evil. And when I go to school, they tell me that being progressive is a good thing, that the only way that America can thrive and survive is by being creative, progressive, and leading to new ideas that are effective and innovating. So I think, and it really is an information war, you know. Alex Jones really killed the title of that. When he says InfoWars, that's really what it is. Information can not only start wars, but end them very abruptly. And that's really what's happening in the public school system nowadays. It is a communication of information, of ideas, and I think as long as we keep describing these people as progressives, we're really kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. Now, I also, this is kind of where it gets a little bit hairy, and it's a little bit of a different topic, but I am also okay with saying that I think we need to be done with the two-party system. But this isn't to say that I believe in, this party or that party or the purple, green, whatever party. It's not to say that, because I think that conservatives are leading the idea war, the information war. Well, not the information war, but the idea war, what's good for America war, that what they're bringing to the table is what's best for America at this time. Can there be better ideas? Yeah, I'm sure. But I don't necessarily think that we need to nuke conservatives as a whole. What the Republican Party has become is something else. They are very pro-Israel, pro everybody else almost other than America. And so this idea of America first, it's a good thing. It's what we should be doing from the get-go and never derive from. But what I do when I say that I think we should get rid of the two-party system, I think we should be done with Democrats altogether. And I think that by no longer calling them progressives, it's a step in the right direction. Because it's really hard to talk about your political enemy and to say that they're wrong, and then to also say that they are the thought leaders. They're what's moving forward. That is an oxymoron. It is stupid as hell. So we have to stop doing that. Just stop it. Knock it off. From this day forward, stop calling left the left. Stop calling Antifa. Stop calling Democrats progressives. They're not progressives. They're the opposite of that. We can come out with a word other than that to assign to their party, but progressive is not one of them. And as long as we do that, we are double feeding the pipeline into our children's brains. We are sending mixed signals, and we just sound stupid when we talk. I really think that. And I hear some of the most educated people when it comes to political topics use this. Alex Jones, Dan Holloway, at any given point, whether they have in, the last week or so, I don't know, but at some point they have described the left as being progressive. And I don't think it's that. I just don't. I think that they are very primitive in how they behave. They are more focused on colors, bright lights, and what feels good than how do we take society to the next level. And for whatever you want to say about religion, at least that's trying to take society to the next level. It's something different. It's something not of this world. It's something, a higher calling, something above us. Whether you agree with it, believe in it, wherever you stand, it's a lot better than saying, ooh, that's black, ooh, that's white, ooh, this makes my pee-pee feel good. So I think we have been doing ourselves a very grave injustice for a very long time, and it's going to be something that's very hard to walk back. But you have to start somewhere at some point in time, and it should have been 10 years ago. So, like I said, I don't like to just come on here and bring the bad news. I don't want to be someone who only talks about fear and hate. I want to be somebody that can come on here, whether the ideas work, whether, they're good ideas, at least they're ideas. And I think this is a good idea. Let's just stop calling Democrats progressives. They're not. And we can go on from there. Once we stop sending our children mixed messages about what the Democratic Party is, it's going to be a lot easier to stray them away from being Democrats. And to fix our country, no matter where you align yourself progressive, conservative, left, right. The Democratic Party is not the way. It's not going to save America. It's only going to hurt America. And I think it's very obvious at this point that that's the case. It literally, almost as soon as a Democratic takes over a city, a state, it goes to shit. As soon as a Republican takes over from a city, and I'm obviously I'm talking very broadly here, but when a Republican takes over a city, state, country, they start to put things back into order. Okay? Now, you can say that, you're saying that they put countries, states, cities back in order, but that's not my idea of order. That's all perspective. It's objective, if you will. And no, that some things are not that. To have a lot of money and to have no money is let me rephrase that. To have a lot of money or a little money is that, okay? Because to me, a lot of money is $100,000. To a millionaire, not so much. To a millionaire, a little amount of money is $100,000. To me, not so much. But to have money and to not have money, or to be negative in an account, is not. That's just not how that works. You can be, green, black, or red in that scenario. You can have money, you can have no money, or you can have negative of no money. And so when you have a leader, a politician take over a country, a state, city, and they begin to take whatever they take over from the red to the black to the green, that is not perspective. That is fact. You've taken that country from being in the negative to being in the positive. You can see that. You can't argue against that. It is what it is. To have natural resources and to not have natural resources is the same thing here. We can take this idea and apply it to anything, pretty much, for the most part. And the same ideas apply. To have a lot of natural resources versus little is perspective, but to have some versus none is not. So I think this is where we start. Let's stop describing the enemy. Let's stop describing the people that have been bad for our countries, our cities, our state, our children as progressive. If you want to call them monsters, I'm okay with that because I think they are. If you want to call them evil, I'm okay with that because I think they are. In a lot of ways, I think that you can justify calling them those things, but you cannot justify calling them progressive. And so that's what I really wanted to talk about today. We can hit on a few other topics while we head out. One of them, which might not be the first time you've heard this, I know Nick Fuentes covered it, but there was a January 6th defendant that was acquitted because his defense, his attorneys, were able to prove that he thought he was, in fact, allowed to be in the Capitol. And this led to there being doubt that he was doing something wrong or trying to trespass or trying to take over the United States government. So he was acquitted. This is very good. I think this is where the narrative should have been from the get-go. When you have the highest in command of the United States government tell you to come to this place at this time, that should be enough in itself. Now, I can understand where you can say, well, he didn't say go into the Capitol. Okay, but there was a lot more people that got charged than people that went into the Capitol. So now that you have police ushering in people into the Capitol, I think that there is doubt there to say that they thought they were in the wrong. Is there some kind of evidence here we can argue the fact that it was an intelligent idea to do so? That if they would have stopped, not been caught up in the moment and thought about it, that this probably wasn't the best idea? Yeah, but there is doubt there. And you want to talk about being progressive, let's talk about the judicial system here. This is something that has been falling behind for a very long time. We no longer really go by that narrative of, beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you have any evidence that somebody is guilty, you can almost condemn them for life for just the bare minimum. But it also depends on who you are, what color you are. And this idea was led on by the Democratic Party. First, they came out and said, hey, look, the white people don't get punished the same way as black people. Then they came out and said, hey, look, you can't punish black people like that. So they really were one of the driving factors in the judicial system falling behind. So, just food for thought. And Dan Holloway was kind of talking about this. This is something else. I'm not the first person to talk about this. But, Justice Thomas isn't doing very well. He's, having some issues. And as soon as the Democratic Party sees this, they decide to go after his wife or try to slander him in a time of weakness to try to get him out of the way. They said, hey, look, we're putting a new justice on our side, but that doesn't give us the lead, so we have to do more. And they don't really do it in the best of ways, kind of more so in corrupt ways and trying to be harmful to people other than playing by the rules. And this is why, because they want to keep the judicial system behind. Because as long as they can do that, then they can punish people for whatever the fuck they want for as very little evidence as they want. And that's really what they need, because their ideas have very little evidence that they are smart, good, or progressive. And that's what they want you to believe. And that is why you don't see pro-Russia things on YouTube. And this is why I say I can't tell you if I'm pro-Russia or pro-Ukraine, because I don't have the evidence to tell me what's actually happening over there, why it started happening to begin with, and I also can't tell you if America had anything to do with it. What I can tell you is I think there is evidence there to say that if you think you support Ukraine, if you are donating to Ukraine, that all of that money is going to where you think it is going. It is probably going to organizations that are very bad. It's probably going to democratic organizations that are doing bad things with that money. It probably isn't going to that Ukrainian mother in a collapsed building giving birth 3 feet, underground level or whatever you think your money's going towards. It's probably actually going towards the CIA and some kind of interference of an American government interfering in the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And you can say I'm wrong if you want, but I don't think there's very much evidence there to say I'm not. I think the exact opposite. So, like I said, you can say Putin's a bad guy all you want, but I don't think that there's clear-cut case to be made. I think that this is just history repeating itself, and we can't even get on board with the definition of a progressive and what that actually means to stop history from repeating itself. So therefore, it will continue to do so. And since the dawn of time, this is how leaders of land, of communities, have moved forward in a lot of ways to conquer, to reclaim, to seek out supplies and resources for their people. And I don't think there is very much evidence to say that Putin's just doing it because he's evil and he wants to kill Ukrainians. I actually think the exact opposite. I think from his viewpoint, he's doing something good. He's reclaiming Ukraine into Russia. He believes that that's naturally part of Russia. So it's not him conquering it, it's him reclaiming it, taking back what was taken from Russia, and with that, it will come national resources and with a lot of other good things. I don't think there's a lot of argument to be made that, obtaining more land and resources is a bad thing for your people. Not only that, but I don't think that 100% of people that are actively in Ukraine are fighting against Russia. I think there were pro-Russian people there. There's pro-Russian things all over and around and in between and dissecting Ukraine. So the only thing we're going off of to say that Putin is, Hitler too, that this is something unprecedented, that he is a war criminal and Obama is not, I don't think you can say that. And if you want to say that, like I said, where we really need to start is, if you want to charge Putin with a war crime, that's fine. But you need to be clear. You need to not be a hypocrite about it. And whatever you decide makes Putin a war criminal will probably mean that Obama, Bush, and Biden are war criminals. So that's a double-edged sword, and I think it's also why you don't see America intervening the way it wants to. I think they are intervening a lot. I think probably a lot more than the common person would think in America. They definitely have influence there. I think they're definitely giving money, support, and firepower to Ukraine to influence what goes on there. But, it is what it is. We'll see how it plays out. I also seen an article that said that, and this just goes along to support my theory here, that the Green New Deal, the great, whatever, the Great Reset, this hasn't been very successful for the Democratic Party. I think it was very successful in getting the Democratic Party where they are as far as the White House and everything else. They were very successful in their campaign and their propaganda to say that this was a good idea. But once it got to people that were more educated on the matter, that really this is what their job is, to look into these things, to make decisions for the American people, that it was not successful. It led to almost the whole world being shut down for 2 years. It's leading to the collapse of the American economy, for gas prices to rise, for racial relations to crumble. I mean, it's leading the American dollar down the shitter, and for it to be being handed out to everywhere and anybody other than the American people that need it. And so what they're doing is they're going to pivot. They're going to redefine and completely switch the narrative. It's no longer going to be the Great Reset. It's going to be the Russian reset. They're going to get what they want done in the disguise of them helping Ukraine. And this is also why we have to be careful in believing everything we hear about Ukraine, because they're going to use this in saying that we're going to pass a law that says we're going to give $100 million to Afghanistan for trans research, but we're going to call it the pro-Russia bill. America has been known to do this, the American regime, that is. And so don't be surprised when you hear bills come out that say, all hail Ukraine, down with Putin bill. If you start to hear things like this, and obviously I'm being dramatic, but anything that is pro-Ukraine and totally 100% obviously against Russia, you better read those bills very thoroughly, very carefully, because there's going to be some swindling going on there. There's going to be some trickery going on there. And you bet your ass they're going to take everything they couldn't get done and the Great Reset and apply it to this new Russian-Ukraine conflict. And it just goes to show you how evil this regime that leads America right now really is. And I know some of the things that I say on here can be perceived as something else. Some might even call it, hatred or whatever. But the reason I say these things is because I think the American people are being tricked. I don't think people support what they think is actually going on. I think they're being misled. And there's, just things that have worked for America for a long time. Things that have worked for humanity for a long time that we are being astrayed from. And that's where they really try to use that progressive word. They try to say, hey, you want to continue doing this thing that we've done for this long because you say it's successful for the American people. That's not progressive. We need to do something else. Well, no, that's not necessarily the case. If it's been doing good, if it's been allowing the American people to move forward without failure, and very little of it needs to be changed, that doesn't mean that it's not progressive. It's actually helping. It's some of the stability that we have as the American peoples to allow us to do other things to be progressive. It allows us to be progressive when it comes to nature and things like this. It allows us, if we have a good economy, if the American people are doing very well, this is when we can be progressive. This is when we can branch out and try new things. But the things that allow us that stability, that should very carefully be looked into before we tamper with those things. If it's doing well, doing good, allowing us to move forward without hurting a lot of people, then we should leave that the fuck alone. And we have allowed the Democrat Party to use this to define themselves as progressive, to define us as monsters, being the conservatives, the Republican Party. So it's just something that I wanted to talk about because I think this is very relevant. When you talk about propaganda, when you talk about a tyrannical government, it's all information. It's all being misled away from what's actually happening. And it's getting harder and harder to find evidence to lead me to believe otherwise. I thought it was fairly obvious before half the country voted for Biden. I thought it was very obvious to look at Portland, Oregon and go, wow, that place is a fucking shithole. Well, what do we know about the defining things about Portland, Oregon? Well, if you talk to Democrats, they will tell you it's a very mixed culture place. There's a lot of, black people there, a lot of gay people there. This is the great stuff about Portland. What they don't tell you about is the crime, the poverty, the drug abuse, the things that don't allow you to be stable, to be progressive in those communities. And because so, Portland is falling apart. But they've already redefined it for you. That to be progressive means to be gay and a minority. It no longer means to move forward, to have innovating ideas, and to be successful. It means something totally different. So a lot of people think Portland is one of the greatest hubs of the United States that is progressive, and it's not. In a lot of ways, it's in the 80s. There's heroin addicts all over the place. There's people sticking their dicks anywhere and everywhere. There's people abusing the judicial system there. I mean, crime is rampant. So I think we need to stop calling the Democrats progressive. And once we can do that, we have to let people know that just because something is a constant, just because something is stability for the American people, doesn't make it a bad thing. It doesn't mean that it's working against being progressive. And those two ideas, those two things to be changed in the minds of young people will do conservatives, along with everyone in America, a great deal of good. And that's really what we're all fighting for here. No matter what side you're on, how you use what words you use to describe yourself, what you're doing is you want the best for you, your people, and then hopefully for the rest of America. So I think that's all that I really wanted to get at today. We'll kind of keep this one a little bit shorter than the norm, but a little bit longer than the last one, and we'll hope that it continues to be successful uploading to Gab TV after the fact. But with that said, you guys stay safe, stay prepared. God bless America first. Peace, y'all.